everybody, Miss Curdy here, and welcome back to our second video for lesson 5. And today we'll be talking about 2 and 5 as factors and 10 as a factor. Before we begin, please fold your paper in half so that way we will be able to cut it out neatly when we're done and glue it in our notebooks to look at as we go through our lesson. All right, let's go ahead and begin. So last video, we talked about 0 and 1 as factors and how simple they were because of the identity property, which tells us that 1 times any factor is the other factor, and the 0 property, where we learned that any number, any factor times 0 is just going to equal 0. So now we're going to talk about 2 as a factor. And for that, we want to think about 2 groups. And what's nice about this is we just have to double the other factor, where we can use like our doubles facts. So 2 groups of 8 is just like doing 8 plus 8, which is something that you've been practicing for years. So all we have to do is double 8. So when I've got 2 as a factor, I'm going to double 8, and I know that 8 plus 8 is 16. Here I see that 2 is a factor, and we know that it doesn't matter where it shows up in the equation because of the commutative property. But as soon as I see that 2 is a factor, I know I just need to double the other number. And I know that 6 plus 6 is 12. Let's do one more. Let's do 7 times 2. So take a second to pause the video and think about doubling the number 7 and what we would get. So in this case, I know it's just going to be 7 plus 7, which is 14. So anytime I'm doing my 2's facts, no matter where that 2 shows up in an equation, I know I can just think of my doubles facts and just double the other factor. Pretty simple. Now let's move down to 5 as a factor. So whenever we have 5 as a factor, we can think of groups of 5. And it becomes just like skip counting by 5s. And that's a skill that we've had for years. So when I think of an equation like 5 times 8, I see I've got my 5. So I'm going to skip count by 5s 8 times. So here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And I can show this on my hands too, where I skip count 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And I did it 8 times. So I get my final answer of 40. So 5 times 8 is 40 by skip counting. So down here, I got a 5 over here, and I can skip count by 5s 6 times. So take a moment. You can either write them all out or skip count on your fingers 5 times to get that answer. So go ahead, pause the video, do some skip counting, write your answer down, and then see how we do it. Alrighty, I know I want to skip count 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's skip count. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So I'll get my answer of 30. Using my fingers, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So whenever we have 5 as a factor, we know we can do this really quickly. It's just skip counting 5 by 5s. I think we're all really good at skip counting by 2's, 5s, and 10s. So we definitely want to use that strategy whenever we see 5 as a factor. So far, you're learned how to multiply by 0 as a factor. You know how to multiply by 1 as a factor. We know how to multiply by 2 as a factor. And now we have a strategy for multiplying by 5s. Let's move on to 10s, and this is another fan favorite. So when we think about 10 as a factor, we can think of groups of 10, and we can skip count by 10s, just like we did with our 5s. So if I want to do 10 times 8, I can skip count 8 times. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and I come up with 80. Go ahead and pause the video and solve 6 times 10, where we skip count by 10s 6 times. Alrighty, so if we've done that, we've gotten 60. So that's one way to think about it, but multiplying by 10 has an even cooler strategy. We can actually notice a pattern, and that's really important as a mathematician. We always want to look for patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and solve all of these for us. 10 times 1 is 10, 10 times 2 is 20, 10 times 3 is 30, 10 times 4 is 40. 10 times 5 is 50. So hopefully by now you're starting to see a pattern whenever we multiply by 10. Go ahead and see if you can figure out 6, 7, and 10 times 8. So if you've answered with a 60, 70, and an 80, you've got it. And what we can notice when we're multiplying by tens, no matter what we're multiplying by, we can just annex, which means stick on, a 0 to the other factor. And this is a really important pattern because I can then multiply 10 by any number, no matter how big. So if I have a 10 times, let's say, a 35, 10 times 35, I know I just need to take that 35 and annex a 0 on it. The word annex is actually like a sixth grade word. It's very sophisticated, but it just means that we're going to stick on that 0 at the end. So 10 times 35, 35 with that 0 at the end is 350. Go ahead and solve 10 times 42. Give that one a try. So if we've got 10 times 42, I know I'm going to use those same two digits and then stick on a 0 at the end. So I would get 420. And this is a really useful strategy whenever we are multiplying by tens. Again, it doesn't matter where in the equation the 10 pops up, if it's first or second, we can always annex on that 0 to solve those problems. So now we have learned about 5 factors for lesson 5 and how to use strategies to solve those equations. And those are probably the top 5 factors for easiest multiplying by. So what I want you guys to do now is cut your note sheet in half, and then you are going to work on your practice pages. So you're going to start with page 113 and 114, and then move on to page 119 and 120. And on all of those pages, you'll be multiplying by 0, 1s, 2s, 5s, and 10s. And remember, your answer keys are posted so that you can always be checking your work to make sure you're understanding the lesson. Please reach out to your teacher if you want any additional practice or have some questions. Have a great one. I'll see you back here for our next lesson. Bye, everybody.